Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. How you doing? Danny Tisdale, and welcome to Harlem World Magazine, around the block, around the world. Harlem World Magazine is for anyone who has a Harlem state of mind, dedicated to news, the Renaissance, stories that celebrate our lifestyle. I'm Danny Tisdale. Join us as we speak to another leader, legend, and trailblazer. Remember, we're independently owned, so please hit the orange button below and support our work. And don't forget to share us, like us, and link to us. Today we have Harlem Dr. Kecia Gaither. She is a double board certified physician in OBGYN and maternal-fetal medicine. Her expertise is grounded in both research and her professional experience in caring for women with diabetes, HIV, and obesity in pregnancy. With more than 20 years of professional experience, she is driven by her mission to provide exemplary prenatal care to all women regardless of circumstance. Dr. Gaither, is positively impacts the lives of thousands of women, delivering valuable information on a spectrum of women's health issues via social media, writing, public appearances, media commentary, teaching, and shows like Harlem World Magazine. I added that. Doctor, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for the beautiful introduction.
Oh, it's you have a wealth of information, and of course, being from Harlem, that's why we love having you on the show. And I wanted to ask you right off, how has let me set it up a little better. Since the last we spoke, we have protests, we have the COVID crisis. And how has the crisis changed your work? Are you now working from home and doing telehealth, or are you old school going into the office?
Well, since I take care of high-risk patients, the likelihood of me ever being at home and doing telehealth is nil. So the patients that I see have to come in, the diabetics, the HIVers, the sicklers, all of these ladies who have really bad comorbid conditions have to come in to be seen. Now, the dynamic of how they come in and how they are seen certainly has changed since COVID has made its appearance. There's a whole different paradigm as far as seeing, our prenatal care patients, not only in our offices, but also on labor and delivery. Certainly the waiting room is designed differently to allow for social distancing. The appointment times are scattered such that there are not a lot of patients, waiting around in the waiting room. They're screened at the front with, their temperatures being taken, questionnaires as to symptoms. Masks are mandatory. When they have to come for ultrasound or fetal testing, their partners are not allowed in that area. So that definitely has changed the paradigm. When they go to labor and delivery, again, there is a definite change. One partner is allowed, but everybody has on full PPE. The partner is not allowed in and out, of the labor and delivery area.
Right.
And once the woman delivers, nobody is allowed on postpartum unit. So there's a marked difference, and certainly when they come to labor and delivery, all of the hospital personnel are in full PPE, and every patient that comes to labor and delivery is tested. So we get rapid testing for COVID. So there's a different paradigm. Most definitely.
It's very, very different, and I imagine. Well, let me stay on this for a second. And do we have, or do you have, by way of those who would know, any projected time of when this might change?
No,
and dare I say, go back to, maybe that's not the right words to use, go back to the way we remember the emergency room to be?
life as we knew it has changed, and I don't see us going back to that for some time. I just don't see it. As a matter of fact, I kind of see that it might worsen a bit.
Yeah, I keep hearing that, and you keep hearing it because people are not following the directions, or other reasons?
There are a number of things. People are not wearing masks. People are having parties. And the thing that's really frightening is COVID, and some people don't, they don't show symptoms. So you don't know who has it or not. You can be asymptomatic and spreading it. So there's, the lack of social distancing, the lack of mask wearing. Keep in mind that there are multiple strains of COVID. Okay, I don't know that that's really been hammered into the population at hand, but there are varied strains of COVID.
That's a good point. I don't think there has been.
And then we're coming up on a time where the flu is going to be rampant. So you've got all of these factors. And while our governor has done a wonderful job in, making the numbers low, I mean, you have people in other parts of the country who, who are in regions where it's surging, and there's travel back and forth.
Right.
So, while it might be at a lull at this point with the travel back and forth and, people on vacation and hiatus and so forth and so on, it's going to be very hard to keep it at bay.
Well, Doctor, I think that's an excellent point. And, part of my challenge here is that we've got 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes, and there's so much to talk about that makes sense, that don't make sense, and then there's that stuff in the middle. How much? This is a tricky question for me to ask because I may not ask it correctly, but I'll go for it. How much do we know about the virus? It seems that over time, instead of us knowing more about it, it looks like it seems over time we're learning less and less about it. Do we know? We don't seem to know a lot about this virus, do we?
No, it's a novel virus, so we're learning as we go. And a lot of the knowledge that we do know comes from the experience of people in Italy and China. So, no, we don't know all of it. It presents differently in different people. Certainly if you have clinical conditions that in some form or fashion lower your immunity, you're susceptible. And we just don't know all of the things that we need to know concerning its transmission. There is the thought that it's aerosolized. There is the thought that it's been found in semen. So is it sexually transmitted? There is the thought that
I didn't know that.
There is the thought that babies have been born with it. So is it placentally mediated? Does it come, during the course of delivery in an infected vaginal canal? I mean, so there's still a lot that we don't know. Does it excrete itself in breast milk? So how long does it stay in the body? Is it excreted in, urine? I mean, we just don't know a lot about it at this point.
Well, it seems that we seem to at least know that those who have pre-existing conditions are more susceptible to the disease, and you're working with women who have diabetes, HIV, and obesity issues. So they're doubly more prone to get the virus. And how are you dealing with that?
Well, here's the thing. I think there's something that really needs to be understood. Inflammation, immunity, and your ability to catch infections are all interrelated. Diabetes is a state of inflammation, constant inflammation. Constant inflammation, lowers your immunity. Okay, there are mediators in your body, which if you're in a constantly inflamed state, predispose your immunity to being lessened. So obesity is one, diabetes is another, hypertension is another. All of these comorbid conditions lower your immunity. And as we know, COVID likes those individuals who have lowered immunity, particularly diabetics. So, I've had some poor obstetrical outcomes in women who are diabetic, poorly controlled, who contract COVID, loss of mother and baby. So one cannot, really emphasize that if you are diabetic, you really need to get on top of your sugars and get yourself well controlled. And in addition to that, perhaps start taking supplementations and eating foods that will boost your immunity. So with that being said, I'm a big proponent of vitamin D, particularly in people of color. People of color naturally are low or deficient in vitamin D, and vitamin D is a vitamin that is involved in a lot of the metabolism of the body. It's involved in your mentation. It's involved in your cardiovascular health. It's involved in your bone formation. For pregnant women, it has been found to decrease the risk of preterm labor and delivery, and most importantly, it is important in your immune function. Black people have melanin in their skin. Melanin inhibits the production of vitamin D, which is made in the skin. So by default, we're already at, a deficit. So it really is important to enhance your immunity by, taking some vitamin D. I usually tell my patients, to take 1,000 to 2,000 IUs per day. I think anybody listening to me who is melanated should have their levels checked. You can either do that by asking your doctor, or you can do it of your own accord. There is a great website, www.nutrient.org, which has vitamin D kits there, information on all vitamins and how they impact your body, as well as information on how to get involved in clinical studies looking at vitamin levels and outcomes across the U.S. So if I can't say anything else but that one thing, vitamin D is really important, particularly now for people of color with COVID running around.
That's extremely important, and I had not heard that before, but that is exactly why I have you on the show to inform us and keep us on point with what we should be doing. And, I'm curious, Doctor, as you, look at your Dr. crystal ball for doctors, where do you see us this time next year?
Probably the same place.
Oh, come on. Really?
This isn't going away anytime soon. It really isn't. It really is not. And you keep hearing, we're going to have a vaccine, you're going to have a vaccine, you're going to have a vaccine,
I do.
But you don't fully know how this virus functions. So I'm trying to, wrap my head around how you're going to have a vaccine when you truly don't know how this virus functions.
Right.
So I think we're going to be in this for the long haul. So if we're in it for the long haul, all we can do is to do what doctors and other professionals out there suggest that we do. And yet we have so many people who are not doing it. Correct. Will they learn the hard way? Yes, I mean, we've already seen cases where, people are, I'm not going to wear my mask. It's against my, belief, or it's against my, freedom, blah, blah, blah. And then either they or someone close to them develops COVID and has a poor outcome. So I'm not quite sure what is not understood. I mean, I'm sure that most people have access to social media and TVs, and, they can look at the stats and see that there are hundreds of thousands of people who have died I'm sure they saw New York going through its horrid crisis, a couple of months ago with, 18-wheeler refrigerated trucks outside of hospitals collecting the dead bodies because people were dying so quickly. Undertakers and the medical examiner's office could not, handle it. Seeing hospital units, quote unquote units, in tents and on boats. I mean, it was horrific. It was horrific. And, somebody being in the middle of all this, I can't stress enough that COVID is real. COVID is real. So, you might not want to wear a mask for yourself, but wear it for your family. I mean, you might be asymptomatic and you're spreading it to your family. I mean, how do you live with the fact that potentially your grandparents or your mother could die from something that you could have easily prevented?
And I would imagine, and I know folks do not want to live with that, and I don't think that they're thinking this through like that, and it's really sad. But I also want our listeners to know they're listening to Danny Tisdale on the Danny Tisdale Show on Harlem World Magazine Radio. Harlem World Magazine is an independently owned company, so please hit the orange button below and become a patron. We are speaking to Dr. Kecia Gaither and Gaither. I keep mispronouncing. Sorry, doctor. I just keep destroying your name, and I apologize. I was saying earlier that I apologize for adding the S, but that was because I guess I know we need a bunch of you to do the great work that you're doing. And, is there, I guess because I was raised by Southern parents, I'm always trying to look for the positive. Is the positive, I know that there's going to be positives on the long term that come out of this crisis that we're in. Do you think that maybe we will get out of the pain that we're going through now, maybe?
I am hopeful. Certainly, I work with a lot of organizations, too, in particular, the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce and
they do great work.
The Westchester Bronx Society of Black Physicians. And, in that capacity, we certainly are promoting a lot of things to advance not only access but information to our community as to some of the things that they need to be doing, access as to how you need to go and get testing, access as to, how to help boost your immunity. So there is positive coming from that. I know that there are quite a few legislators who are working towards, facilitating health care for people who are impacted by COVID. So from that standpoint, at least there is a recognition and there is a move to action. I think a lot of it will depend as far as moving in a really positive direction as to what's going to happen in November.
Yes. And listeners, you know what I'm going to say, that you have to get out there and vote so that you can make your voice heard. Whoever you vote for, please get out and vote. You know how important it is to do that. And, Doctor, I really hear you when you say that, because I talk about being positive and doing positive things, but so much of it relies on the populace and listeners and readers out there making those positive moves. And like you said earlier, is, that first step is just wearing a mask. And I know that some people, don't want to and don't feel that they will get the virus, but we don't want them to learn the hard way and have someone that's affected by it, and especially being affected by their non-actions. We really have a lot of work to do.
We do, and another thing that I've seen that really bothers me is, seeing people with their children. The adults have a mask on, but their children don't. I mean, children get COVID too. I mean, that just kind of blows my mind when I see that.
Right.
It doesn't. It does. Quite a few. Patients come to the office. They have their children. They are masked up, and I will ask them, "You have a mask. How come your baby doesn't?" And then they look at you with this blind, deer in the headlight
look on their face, right?
Yeah, it doesn't occur to them that my kid can get it too. Then you give them masks, and your baby needs to have a mask on. So that really needs to be taken into consideration.
Well, so the hospital isn't set up like the supermarket, where as soon as you walk in, there's a big sign that says "No mask, no shopping." I guess you can't really do that.
Well, actually, the hospital is set up at this point now where everybody that comes in gets their temperature taken, and depending on where they're going, yes, they are offered masks. Yeah.
Got you. I see what you're saying. You offered them a mask. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it would be hard to just turn them away under the circumstances.
No, you can't turn them away. But the paradigm has changed as far as how hospital visits are made, how surgeries are scheduled. Everybody gets tested pre-op period for COVID. It's just a very different paradigm. And not only does it impact how we take care of patients, certainly in our personal lives, there is an impact for physicians too. I mean, every physician that I'm friends with, we all have the same kind of, what do you call it, maneuvers of how when we come home, there should be a room as soon as we come in, if not in the garage, where you take your clothes off, you put them in a bag, for sterile washing, and you go and you take a shower somewhere before you even interact with the members in your household.
Right. Makes complete sense, and that's something I hadn't thought of course, that is a strategy and how you would go about that. And I wanted to go a little further and ask you something personal, because you're working on the front lines. You're dealing with patients who have diabetes, HIV, obese. How do you, maybe escape isn't the right word, but how do you press the reset button? How do you go home and just veg on the couch looking at TV, or do you take walks? How do you kind of, reset yourself and prepare yourself for the next day?
I can't lie and say that it's easy, because it's not.
I can imagine.
Some days really get to you, particularly when you can't go anywhere and socialize like I once did. So what I do is I listen to a lot of music. My bathroom has become my spa, with my aromatherapy and, my candles and, the nice smells and the quiet music. So that's kind of how I decompress. I was a shoe horse to begin with, or a clothes horse, but now my shoe collection is phenomenal. Particularly, a lot of the stores are having these sales because people aren't in the stores buying.
Right.
So a lot of merchandise is really quite low. So I have a phenomenal shoe collection that's been enhanced since the virus.
Since the virus.
Yeah.
So you're the one supporting the retail shops.
That's right. So that's kind of how I decompress, and
great.
then certainly, all of my friends are going through the same thing. So, we have our Zoom parties and just kind of talk to each other like that. What else can you do?
I know. I'm kind of doing the same thing, and I'm, even though we've been living through this for since March.
Mm-hmm.
It still is. I'm still almost in an unbelievable state in saying that, this is how we're living our life. I'm trying not to go outside that much because I can see that my neighbors, 50% of them are not wearing masks. So if I go out, I don't want to have to, engage with them about putting on their mask. So, I'm for the most part going out only when I have to go shopping.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I can say that in my neck of the woods, I do see that there's a lot of compliance with mask wearing.
That's great.
But there are areas that it just isn't. And in the bulk of the stores and shops and things where you have to get whatever it is that you need, they have on the door, no mask, you just don't come in. So.
Yeah, and the same. Yeah, and I'm noticing that same here too. And we are, of course, as I knew what happened, we're at our last 3 or 4 minutes here, and I wanted to ask you. I know. And I've got about 3 more questions I want to ask you, so I'm going to just kind of whittle it down to 1 or 2. And one is another future question. How do you think this will change your industry?
I think to some extent in some medical specialties there will be more telemedicine. I think that at least for the obstetrical component, that's not going to change too much towards telehealth because, you have to actually see
the patient. Right.
Yeah. But I think there will be more telehealth. I'm hopeful that there will be an expansion of health care because for a lot of people, their health care tied to their employment and after losing their jobs, their health care goes along with it. So I'm hopeful that there will be an accounting of that and a continuation of a lot of the things that President Obama put in place towards health care for the populace.
Yeah, and no matter what our president says about our current president says about health care as we know it, it was better than not having health care in any capacity. So I completely hear you with that. And as I knew what happened, it's flying by. And my last question, Doctor, is do you have any way that our readers can stay in contact with you and stay in contact with the great work that you're doing?
Sure. I have a website, www.KeciaGaither.com, and my name is spelled Kecia. My last name, Gaither. So it's www.KeciaGaither.com. I'm certainly on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Kecia Gaither MD. So those are 2 of the best ways to get in contact with me. And certainly if anybody is looking to have prenatal care with a high-risk condition, I'm the Director of Perinatal Services and Maternal-Fetal Medicine at New York City Health Hospitals, Lincoln, in the Bronx.
Doctor, thank you for being on the show. I always love having you on the show, informing our listeners and educating myself. And it's always great having you on the show with the wealth of information that you impart upon us. I'm about to go get some vitamin D right after I get off the phone with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The show. Thank you. And thank you. And listeners, hope you've heard, and if you didn't hear, play it over again, the great information that Dr. Gaither has provided for us today. I'm not joking. I'm going to go get my vitamin D and stay around as long as I can to impart this information with you. And don't forget to like us, share us, and link to us as often as possible. And don't forget to support us also and become a patron below. Thank you again for listening to the show, and you know we will talk to you extremely soon. Bye-bye. Take care.